And welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Jan Amelie. Today I'll be talking about Series 4, Episode 2, DNA, helping my guest, the Desolated Quill. Again.
Hello, again.
Yeah. For anyone who hasn't gathered, we record 2 episodes back to back, so he hasn't really gone anywhere.
Help, I'm trapped in her basement.
Oh, let him go off this episode, don't worry. Okay, right, so let's dive straight into the opening scene, which is, of course, Mr. Rimmer and Crichton doing sort of serious sounding things in the drive room.
Yeah.
I noticed actually there was an interesting contrast here to the start of Body Swap. In the start of Body Swap, it's Rimmer and Crichton doing sensible, important things. Lister comes in and isn't bothered. Now in this episode, Lister is part of the serious scene, and Cat's the irresponsible one.
This is the scene I always point to when I say this is why the Lister and Crichton friendship is so. For me, is why I love that friendship so much, is because it's not just Crichton that benefits from it, it's also Lister. He, as a result of teaching Crichton, he ends up maturing and becoming more responsible. And for me, it's a really almost sort of like throwaway. You can almost sort of like just skip past it, but it's this scene, with him and Crichton sitting side by side doing calculations on the computer, whereas, as you say, in Body Swap, Lister, all he cared about was his poker game. It's a major sort of character shift, which I just, yes, as someone who's very invested in Lister and Crichton's friendship, I always get a kick whenever I see that particular scene. And then, of course, you've got the cat trying to blow dry his hair because
it's hilarious. Obviously, Cat has an excuse not to mature because he is literally a cat.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I find most fascinating as well is that it's set in 23rd century, late 21st century. Who knows at this point? It depends on the series. It's set in the future, and still have plug-in hair dryers and plug socket. That I've always found that it reminded me a little bit of Ridley Scott's Alien. That kind of retro kind of thing, but just sort of played up for laughs a bit. Like I wonder how much of that is intentional and how much of that is, that's just the budget we had. We couldn't come up with.
I guess you could explain it away in the same way that they do the videos and the future thing. Videos, have come back into fashion, etc.
Yeah. I mean, they're triangles now, so things have improved.
Yeah, they've developed. They've been refined.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also a very amusing continuation of the scene is the fact that Emma immediately jumps to the conclusion that this UFO must be aliens who are going to return Glenn Miller. It's so bizarre the way he goes off on a rant.
Yeah, and then he opens up the communication channels and just sort of shouting at the spaceship, going, "We don't want him. Go away."
Took him, you can keep the Smegger.
Yes. Ritter lives a very strange life, I must say.
He does. And to be honest, I always thought it was a bit odd that he wouldn't like Glenn Miller's music, because you'd think that was his kind of thing. But it just so happens that actually not for this podcast. It just so happens that I recently watched an old film which actually featured Glenn Miller and his band and his music, and it's sort of 40s swing music, and it's very sort of pleasant, and fun, and basically no wonder Rimmer doesn't like it, because his taste in music is terrible. Sorry, but Glenn Miller is too cool for Rimmer even.
Yeah, if it doesn't have a Hammond organ in it, yeah, you don't want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do have a soft spot for that kind of music because my dad was a fan of the sort of 40s and 50s jazz and swing music and stuff, you know. So I mean, that kind of music, it always sounds cool and fun to me, you know. So it just, you know, for me, it just adds an extra element of silliness to Rimmer's behaviour here because, you know,
Yeah,
frankly, I think if they did bring Glenn Miller on board and he started playing their music, it would probably do Rimmer good.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it would be not, even if it was Glenn Miller, it'd be nice just to have another person on board that isn't Rimmer or the cat. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I know nothing about what Glenn Miller was like as a person.
Maybe
I know he was good at music.
maybe Lister could join Glenn Miller and form a band.
They could. I mean, I could imagine Lister. I mean, I know Lister's more of a guitar person, but I could imagine him getting into, say, the trumpet or something.
Yeah.
Let's face it. You know, I mean, he'd do a lot for companionship and fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Move. So yeah. Right. Okay. So move. Let's move on to the bit where they're actually on the UFO, and of course we get this very funny sort of let's split up scene, you know, and of course Rimmer point blank refuses to go with Kat, so Rimmer and Crichton go off together and do that stupid cartoonish kind of you go behind me, no, I'll go behind you kind of thing.
I mean, what I love as well is the design of that spaceship. It's one of the, because that's like one of my big bugbears when it comes to sci-fi. It's when it's kind of like they're on an alien spaceship, but it clearly looks like something a human would build. Like this is something like the way like it's designed, like the weird things on the wall. It's like this is clearly not of human origin, you know, and it just looks alien and it looks weird, and I just absolutely.
I agree. Yeah, I mean they really did a good job of making it look, you know, not like just some sort of fancy spaceship, you know, and yeah, they did a really good job there, you know, because you do actually. You know that there could be things on this ship, you know, that the dwarfers aren't prepared to cope with, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and also I like as well that they don't provide an explanation for where the ship comes from or who was piloting it. I think that
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, you know, you point out.
adds such a good air of mystique to the whole thing. It's like even now, it's like I mean I don't think we even know what happens to the ship at the end of the episode. I think do they just get rid of it or do they, you know?
I think they just sort of leave it. I think they just sort of once they turn Crichton back to being a mechanoid, I assume they just go because you know it's obviously a bad idea to mess about with that thing. So let's just go.
Yeah, but I just found that like as an interesting sort of one-off kind of concept because I know Grant Naylor don't like, you know, they didn't want to do aliens per se, you know, for Red Dwarf. You know, they wanted to get away from that. But this is, I think, the closest they get to actually doing that. You know,
well, of course there is the they find a three-headed man who Crichton says was clearly originally human. But I guess you could, you know, he wasn't necessarily an original crew member. He could have been a later human explorer who found the ship and then made a horrible mistake.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was that was a very bizarre scene as well. And with identifying him with a video club card.
Yeah,
you too, Harry Wallet with a video.
He needed a video club card so they'd recognise him.
Yeah. Weren't you the bloke that came in last week, sneezed and caused a monsoon?
Yeah, you really do have to give Grant Naylor credit. They are very good at writing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then of course we have the sort of setup with Lister and Cat getting themselves into bother. Cat stubbornly refusing to go and get Crichton. Do nothing, press nothing, get Crichton.
What, do you think I need to get novelty condom head to bail you out?
It's so believable that Cat will be too stubborn to go and get him until it's too late.
Yeah, it's really funny, but also really, really tense as well. I think that's the first time I felt tense watching a Red Dwarf episode, because it's kind of like, what does this machine actually do? It's like, but maybe stop pressing buttons now, Cat.
Yeah, you actually don't know what it's going to do the first time you see the episode. It is disconcerting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, later episode, like series 5 in particular, I think that's when they really start playing around with tone. You start to get stuff that's with more of a horror vibe, or this kind of.
Series 5, is generally, well, I would say generally scary, but I mean, on original viewing, of course. I mean, not so much when you know what happens, but I mean, it does have some genuinely scary moments.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think prior to that, Red Dwarf was very much a comedy, but this is, I feel like, speaking from personal experience, DNA felt like the first time they started to kind of experiment a little bit and sort of going, let's go for something a little bit darker and a little bit more intense, and just see what happens. Let's see if we can make it work.
Yeah,
and
of course. In the next episode, they sort of continue that theme, justice, with the Simeon and so on. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Sorry, did I put you off your vibe? Yeah.
No.
Right. Okay. Well, in that case, we let me see. Just trying to think. I don't have that much to say about the sort of transformations, because I mean they're funny, but I mean obviously they're set up to sort of get to the meat of the episode, which is of course Crichton being transformed into a human.
I wasn't expecting it to go that route at all. But when it did happen, I remember the first time when I first watched the episode, and I suddenly saw, the beam of light comes down and traps Crichton, and it's kind of like, oh my god, are we actually doing this? We're not, are we? No, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And then suddenly it's, he turns into a human. You see Robert Llewellyn without the makeup for the first time, and it's like, oh my god, we're actually doing it. We're making him human. And then for me, the big question going on from that was, is this going to stick, or are they going to, because the thing is, it's Red Dwarf. Like, I honestly could have, I could have bought that this would change everything. They could have gone, well, let's keep him as a human for the rest of the show.
Could have, yeah. I mean, he would still have been different enough psychologically,
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it could have worked if they decided to go that route. But I mean, I think it's probably better that they didn't, but still.
Yeah. I think it probably would have been too big a change, I think. But nevertheless, it was the potential for it. It's just like when that first happened, I remember my eyes just opened wide. I was kind of like, oh my god, we're actually doing this. Wow, we're making Crichton human, and then we get, and that it didn't disappoint at all. It did not disappoint.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely classic. I mean, to be honest, I noticed, watching this, this series, all these episodes through for my podcast. I mean, if you count the last day back in series 3, which I definitely do, Crichton gets 3 episodes in a row, very good episodes focused on him, and he's very, very happy.
Yeah, well, I think they must have. I think Rob Grant and Doug Naylor must have realised just how good of a character Crichton really is. That they immediately, after the end of series 3, they immediately went, let's do another 2 Crichton episodes. Because it's clearly got a lot of material to work with him. And the audience.
I realised that it was a rich vein to mine, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, of course, when he turns back when he turns into a human, I'll put this: he's naked, so presumably the entire crew know what he looks like naked.
And a cat as well. So I'm human, yeah, but you lost your looks.
They do quickly find him a blanket, but presumably at first he was naked.
Yeah, I think were they referring to? Because I saw your cat looking down. I think was he referring to his groinal attachment? Like
I'm
maybe
not sure. I mean, he was looking disdainful, but I mean, I'm not entirely sure if he was referring to looking downwards or just to the whole ensemble.
yeah, it's just the way I saw it. It's kind of like a comment, sort of going, "Yeah, it looks like your groinal attachment shrunk."
Well, of course, we do get a lot more commentary on groinal attachments in
Oh,
the episode.
oh, a lot more. The glorious Polaroid scene. The
Yeah.
glorious Polaroid scene.
But yes, don't worry, I am working my way.
We will come to that.
Honest, I think we have probably just about arrived at that now. The double Polaroid scene, which is just so perfect. Actually, one thing before we get into the double Polaroid scene, at the start, where Lister talks to Holly and says, "How is he?" I just want to take a moment to appreciate Hattie's delivery. Physically, he's fine. He's got the body of a perfectly normal 30-year-old human male, apparently, and then just sort of smirks a bit.
Yeah,
Bridge does suggestion that Holly appreciates naked cotton.
Yeah, I mean, Hattie Haybridge doesn't get nearly the credit she deserves, I don't think. Because people quite rightly love Norman Lovett's version, but like Hattie Haybridge gets some really good moments as well.
I mean, she sort of makes the most of all of them. I mean, it's kind of odd though, because the previous episode, Camille, they ask her, what did you see, Holly? And she says, "Oh, I didn't see anything. I don't feel I've got any desires." And in the documentary, Hattie says she thinks that's actually a mistake, and that surely Holly would have some desires. And the thing is, it's obvious that Holly does have desires. I mean, a few episodes later in Dimension Jump, she's clearly smitten with Ace, for instance.
Yeah. I think I like the in the previous episode, Camille, she said, I don't think I got any desires, either that or my screen was foggy.
Yeah,
and I think
her screen was foggy.
Yeah, that's the canon explanation for me. It's like, yeah, her screen was foggy. She didn't get a good look at Camille before.
Yeah, the real explanation, of course, is that Robin Dog being lazy. But whatever.
Yeah. Well, I suppose as well with Camille as well, is that it was probably hard to sort of go, how do we have Camille turn into a computer? Like, would it be like a hologrammatic head? Would it be a computer screen? What would it? I think maybe it was the logistics of it, maybe.
I suppose if you were going by parallel universe, then if it hadn't been obviously for very impossible reasons, it could have been Norman Lovett. Except obviously Norman Lovett would not come back because he'd fallen out with Paul Jackson at that stage, or somebody,
Yeah.
I mean, logically, really, she should have seen Norman Lovett, I suppose.
Yeah.
Although I suppose you could say that technically it's supposed to be Holly, and it was Hilly who was in love with Norman. So I mean, I guess you could explain it that way.
Yeah. I mean, and then of course, with the whole gag with the two photos.
Oh yeah, God!
Great old face.
Yeah, I have to say, Kate's expressions in this scene and Robert's expressions in this scene. I mean, round of applause. I mean, they're both so great in this scene.
Yeah. And then, and so going, I was just mildly flicking through an electrical appliance catalogue, and you could hear the studio audience as well, starting to laugh, because it's kind of like, oh God, where are we going with this? What erection from an electrical appliance catalogue? Dare we ask? What happened?
It's a very amusing way, of making it clear, that he is still psychologically a mechanoid.
Yes. It was the super suck vacuum cleaner with self-emptying dust bag, and then he does the thing, wiggles his eyebrow.
The eyebrow waggle.
It's like, no, Crichton, no vacuum cleaner should give a human being a double Polaroid.
Yeah, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. Just not a thing. Not a thing.
Yeah, that's got to be up there as one of my top 10 favourite Red Dwarf moments. You know, I probably wouldn't give it. Probably not gold. It would probably be sort of like a silver or a bronze. But it's because I'm still thinking about the tarantula scene from series 5 with the cat at the keyboard.
Oh, the keyboard. That's a great scene.
Yeah, that might be the gold, but this definitely second place. Silver medal for like top 10 Red Dwarf moments. Definitely number 2.
It's just, a perfectly conceived scene, which, as I said, sort of milks so many laughs, from the differences between humans and mechanoids, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, and just Craig Charles's reactions as well. Just him looking more and more exasperated, or the other one as well when Crichton first goes, "Well, I want to talk to you about my penis," and then he just like cracking up. But part of me wondered, was that for real, or was that?
I think it was scripted that Crichton says you've gone straight into smirk mode, so I think he was meant to smirk. But It does kind of look like Craig is just losing it.
No, it really does. It does kind of look like, that maybe you were supposed to smirk, but then you just started giggling. Which I wouldn't blame him, because the whole thing is just so absurd.
Yeah, I guess. He could have giggled. It could have. They could have left it in because it would have been, in part of the scene. But yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I have to say, it's interesting. That Grant Naylor, as presumably, I put this, people in possession of penises, wrote such very unflattering descriptions.
Yeah, it's like yeah, the last turkey in the shop look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shakespeare had fun. Einstein.
It's just, it is very, 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 a very, very amusing scene,
And it's like, because Crichton looks up to humans and Lister, so the idea of them having something as grotesque as a penis hidden away, it's like being told that Father Christmas isn't real.
Yeah, Shakespeare had one.
Oh dear, poor love. Poor love.
It is interesting, that when Lister says, look, maybe you should change back. Crichton immediately goes into denial. No, I'm not. I'm not going to be a sidestep mechanoid again.
Yeah, and then telling those really awful jokes, like deliberately awful jokes. But it's.
They're very deliberate. As you say, they're very deliberately, obviously, purposely awful, and it's kind of an obvious metaphor, for a member of an oppressed group who's become a member of the privileged group, and is sort of hanging up on his former friends. It's obvious because we see that later in the scene with the spare heads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's. Yeah, it's weird as well, coming off the back of the Polaroid scene as well. It kind of goes from absolutely hilarious to being, I think, a little bit uncomfortable. Listening to him talking like that about mechanoids, and making these.
Just kind of backs away slowly.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you are meant to be uncomfortable. They do agree later on. That that he's been behaving like an idiot. You are kind of meant to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've been a complete and total Polaroid head.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, so moving on to the next scene, where basically the others are discussing Crichton's new state, and of course Rimmer thinks that Crichton's absolutely lucky he's ascended to the pinnacle of, etc., etc. And of course, Lister disagrees.
Of course. And yeah, I just love as well. Rimmer's trying to clone himself from his own dandruff as well.
It's so hilarious. I mean, of course, it doesn't go anywhere because Cat sneezes on it.
Yeah, that was an accident. Apparently, that was completely by accident. Like Danny John Jules just sneezed and kept it in, because it was just too good.
You know what? It's a perfect way to. I mean, you would think logically that Rimmer could find some more, but I guess the events of this episode probably make him realise that using the DNA machine is a bad idea.
Yeah, but I just, it was one of those happy accidents that Danny sneezing at just the right moment.
That is a happy accident. If that was a happy accident, then it was absolutely perfect because the way Cat looks at Rimmer, sort of sideways afterwards. Oops.
To him, like, you did not just do that, did you?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh,
but yeah, Lister and Rimmer arguing about the merits of being a human. Yeah, that was a very well written scene. I thought really well written.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, of course, this is also where they changed the continuity about Lister and Kochanski, so that they did briefly date before the accident, which personally I think was a good idea.
Which I prefer that actually. Personally, because I think that's a good.
Yeah, because it makes Lister seem less sad, basically.
Exactly, yeah. Plus, also, if you want to be really, technical about it, if you wanted like an excuse to justify it in canon, you could say that, time slides, in series 3, when because Rimmer turned back into a human briefly from up, maybe something else in the timeline, so that Kochanski and Lister did briefly date before breaking up. So it's not that big of a retcon. There are you can sort of sort of muddle.
You can justify it. You can get around it. Yeah.
Justify it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I never saw that as like a big kind of tonal change. For me, the bigger one was Lister going, "I'm a 23rd century guy," when prior to that, it was set in the late 21st century.
Yeah. I think they probably realised that. I think maybe, I don't know, but I think they realised, that 21st century was too recent, because when they were writing this, we almost were in the 21st century and we were nowhere close to what we see in Red Dwarf, so maybe that's why they changed it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then also in the next episode, they expand the crew to 2,000 people, which is another change.
It was in the hundreds and now it's in the thousands,
Yeah, which is another change I like. I think that's because Holly
makes more sense for a ship that big.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, you're right. It makes Lister less sad, and also gives him more of a reason to to pine for what he lost. If you pine for something you never had, then after a while it's just kind of like, oh, get over yourself. It's
whereas if you pine for something you did have, it's more understandable.
Yeah, exactly. And it just becomes another link to all the stuff he lost 3 million years ago. Just adds an extra layer of tragedy to it.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Oh, I do also want to comment on. I mean, this is a very interesting scene, with them all contributing. But I don't know if you noticed, she is actually on the screen throughout, but she has no lines at all. It's kind of marks the start of the decline in her role, I think, because
yes.
It annoys me because as a computer, she could easily be written into the scene, with some meaning, about she would have had a perspective. I mean, it's interesting because it contrasts. There's an earlier scene in Thanks for the Memory where Cat is sleepy on the bunk as Lister and Rimmer argue, and in the audio commentary, the cast notice and they say, "Well, why is he there if he hasn't got anything to add?" But then at the very end, he opens an eye and he delivers a punchline. You should have bought him a tie. And Hattie should have had a similar punchline here, I think.
Yeah. Something like like maybe if the sneeze was planned beforehand, maybe they could have had Holly say something after that, but because it was an accident,
Yeah, I mean, really, it just annoys me because Hattie is a really good actor, and they should have given us something to do, something to say there. I mean, even a non-verbal reaction in close-up would have done. Just something.
Yeah, it's. In many ways, I think that's the mixed blessing of Crichton, because I'll always love Crichton and what he adds to the show, but in some respects, he did effectively kill off Holly pretty much, because that Holly's job before that was to be the one to do the exposition and was kind of almost sort of the straight man of the group, It's like, but Crichton could do that and come onto planets with the characters.
Yeah, I mean, you are right, but I mean, the thing obviously Crichton isn't present in the scene for obvious reasons, so they could have given Hattie some lines.
Yeah, no, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, but I think that's in some ways a microcosm for like the big problem with introducing Crichton into the show. Even though it was, I think, like one of the best decisions they ever made, it also had the downside that Holly just had less to do, and and especially Hattie as well, who absolutely is like an absolutely incredible and really funny actor, but just doesn't get as many opportunities to show that off. There's never there are a couple of moments like the black holes in Marooned, or and stuff like that. She does get like your white hole come, in a couple of episodes' time. She does get a moment, but she doesn't quite get as many iconic moments as Norman Lovett did.
Yeah, it is true. She does she makes the absolute most of it, though. I mean, when she's sort of in the background of the scene, you see her sort of acting and reacting to people, what people say, and she does make the absolute most of it. And I'm gonna be maybe, I don't know, slightly controversial here and say I think she's actually a better actor than Norman. I mean,
I actually agree. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think it's the fact that she's a woman as well has something to do with it as well. I think that's a nice sort of balance. I think
she adds a bit of balance to the overwhelmingly male crew.
Exactly. Yeah, I always thought that was. I mean, to the point with in the US remake, which we don't talk about. They Holly in that is a woman from the get-go, so clearly they latched onto that, and thought that was a good idea, in terms of the gender balance and gender diversity. It was a good idea.
I mean, it just so happened actually in the original sort of radio show, which was sort of the vague genesis of Red Dwarf, there was a Holly-like character, and at that stage she was female. Basically, the reason Holly became male was because they liked Norman Lovett's performance.
Yeah. Yes. What was it? Like Dave Hollins Space Cadet,
Dave Hollins Space Cadet, and the computer was called Hab, I think. Or Hal.
Okay.
It was a very obvious Hab or Hal. It was a very obvious, sort of influenced by HAL 5000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. The scary computer that goes mad.
Yeah, but instead it's just senile.
Yeah, it's not actually dangerous. Well, technically not dangerous anyway.
No, Holly's too nice to be dangerous. I think, it's only when she tries to correct her senility in White Hole that she becomes dangerous.
True, yeah, it's interesting, that having a massive IQ jump makes her less. Well, I wouldn't say she was unpleasant, but less nice, or at least more impatient.
Yeah, prick. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I like it because I mean, it's different. It's a nice change, and it gives it lets Hattie play something different, So I mean, I do like it.
Yeah, and she really gave it her all for that one.
She
Yeah.
really did. Yeah, I mean, when I get to Whitehall, which isn't far away, of course, I fully intend to do it as much
Oh yeah.
as I can. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, just briefly on the topic of Norman Hattie. I mean, I do not want to sound as though I'm hating on Norman. I mean, I enjoy.
No.
I enjoy Norman's performance. It just so happens that I marginally prefer Hattie's performance.
Yeah. It's literally just because of the gender for me. It's why I prefer Hattie over Norman. But Norman, I mean, you'll never take away from how good he was. He's with all his great gags and everything. But it's purely because of the gender. I think it works better for me. Holly being a woman.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, I think Norman obviously had better material, but Hattie made the most of the material she did have.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm. Oh yeah, the scene with Crichton's spare heads, including of course Sparehead Free with his Yorkshire accent. It's a very funny scene.
Who came up with that? I don't know.
Gee, I think it was Robert actually. He was doing a silly Yorkshire accent.
Just all the idea of he has his. I mean I get that he would have spare parts, but the idea that his spare heads are conscious, that they have their own personalities, and that they all talk to each other.
That is interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Really odd. Really, really odd. And then to cap it all off with the spare hand as well, flipping the bird. It's
that's just a perfect way to end that scene.
Yeah. But it's just from looking at it outside of a comedy perspective and looking at it from a science fiction perspective, it's like if you take it too seriously, your brain starts to go into like really weird places. It's like, okay, so hang on a minute, all the Hess have their own separate identities. So what and the arms as well. So is Crichton like a gestalt entity? He's not just one person. He's like a combination of different. He's like Legion from Series 6.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, of course. Because I don't blame you if you don't remember this because it's from a far less popular episode. But in Tika to Ride, if you remember, Lister gets Sparehead too, and Fark puts it on Crichton, because he knows Crichton will not agree to what he wants to do. So, and Sparehead too agrees, because he's bored. Yeah. He's bored. He wants to be bad. So that does kind of imply that Crichton doesn't use his spare heads that much, doesn't it?
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I mean, sorry, I had to groan because you mentioned Tika to Ride, and I absolutely detest that episode of what they do to Crichton in that one.
I must admit, I do not like that episode because of Lister in that. Lister is so out of character in that episode, but I don't want to get onto Series 7 because we'll be here all night to do that. So
exactly. Yeah. Oh god, but yeah, you got a point. Yeah, the spare heads don't come out the cupboard very often. Particularly Sparehead 3. What happened to it? Well, it's got droid rot. But how did he? Good God, how long has he been stuck in that cupboard? That he turned into that. And yeah, just the idea of get droid rot, you become Northern.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're Northern, that's kind of offensive, but I'm not so.
Yeah. They're all from the north, aren't they? I think Grant Naylor are from Manchester, and Craig Charles is a Scouser, so I suppose it's kind of
probably kind of. I think it was kind of an affectionate poking at Yorkshire accents.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was more sort of self-deprecating than anything else. But yeah, that's just that whole scene, and then of course Crichton insulting his own kin because he thinks he's superior now. It's like, yeah, this is a side of Crichton we don't like.
I mean, it makes me. Well, I wouldn't say it makes me wince, but I mean, it almost makes me wince, because it's so sort of analogous, to, I don't know, how do I put this? A person of color who is white passing insulting a person of color who isn't white passing, or something like that. I mean, it's obviously meant to sort of echo that kind of thing, and it is very. It does make me uncomfortable, but I mean, it's obviously meant to. So
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that Red Dwarf has always been really good at. They take a very serious, because it is what Crichton does. It's quite a serious subject matter, but it's kind of veiled in this kind of ridiculous kind of he's talking to his own head in a cupboard. You can't take it too seriously.
And also,
but
he looks like a 70s DJ from hell.
Oh God, yeah, the costume.
The outfit, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know which I love more, the tacky coat or the pink trousers.
I mean, Howard Gurdon says it's just supposed to be a mishmash of what the crew look like, and of course Crichton has absolutely no idea. It's completely wrong.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I think what I love as well is again, kudos to Robert Llewellyn as well, is that even without the makeup, he's still doing all the Crichton mannerisms. He's still doing the over the top facial expressions and the silly walk and everything. And it's I think to the point where one of the funniest things from the behind the scenes documentary they did, with Ed By talking about the episode. And he says at one point he was watching the episode back and he was sort of going, "Oh my God, they forgot to put his mask on." And find himself. It's like, no, it's meant to be like that.
I think it's just I think Ed also says, that it was good thing that they cast Robert, because he's so expressive, that his expressions can still come through all the rubber and so on.
Yeah, but I love that now that he's human, he hasn't stopped doing that. Like it's still recognisably the same character.
Definitely. I mean, basically that is Robert. I mean, I have met Robert in person. I mean, at Dimension Jump, and I've seen him give paddles and so on. He really is that expressive.
Yeah. He's just a really good actor and a really good performance. It's. And then the scene after that, where he's talking with Lister. It's again just the two of them just bounce off each other so well, and sell the friendship.
Definitely. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, because Lister did suggest to Crichton even in the double Polaroid scene that you should change back, but he knew Crichton wasn't ready then. But I mean, it's obvious that Lister has just been sort of quietly waiting for Crichton to realise that he needs to change back.
Yeah, well, it shows the level of kind of trust as well. It's like Crichton's excited about being human, but I know that he's mature enough that he'll eventually come round and realise this isn't in his best interest.
I like the way you put that. I mean, again, it shows an understanding between them. That they know they can sort of trust each other to sort of eventually come to the right conclusion, but they just need time to think about it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's. Yeah, I always love Lister and Crichton. Always, that'll always be my favourite aspect of the show.
I do love their friendship. A lot. I love Lister and Rim as a ship. It doesn't mean I can't appreciate Lister and Crichton's friendship. It's a lovely thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I did one line did kind of leap out at me though, where Lister says, "Crichton, depression's there for a reason. It's the mind's way of telling you something's wrong." I mean, obviously he's right, but I mean that is so ironic when you think about Lister in the Dave era, very obviously depressed.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and Crichton trying to help Lister in the same way Lister tried to help him. as well.
I mean,
You know,
like in the beginning of Dear Dave, where he's trying to console him about it because he's missing the human race, and etc.
yeah, yeah. Oh god, that was so funny.
I mean, Dear Dave isn't the best episode, but it is sweet for the. I mean, for the relationship between Lister and Crichton.
It's a nice low budget, self-contained kind of story. Now, it reminded me a lot of like series one. Like it's the kind of thing you would see in a series one episode. I think that's why I've got like such a even though I recognise it's not like one of the better episodes, I've got a fondness for it because it does feel like kind of like a nostalgia trip almost. It's like, oh, I remember when we used to do episodes like this when it was just about the characters and dealing with their own personal hang-ups rather than what's the monster of the week.
I mean, I do like it too. It is very reminiscent of the series one or two. Series one. I mean, the reason was, that they'd run out of budget, so they needed a bottle episode. But I mean,
yeah, they ran out of money. Yeah.
I mean, I think considering the behind the scenes production problems which they detail it on the DVD. I mean, I think it worked out quite nice. It is a nice sort of nostalgic from that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it is always it's interesting, that the parallel Lister draws with Crichton's behaviour in this episode is, that he as in Lister was a class traitor once because he went into a wine bar.
Oh yeah. Yeah, where will it end? Next thing you'll know, I'll be playing squash every Tuesday with a bloke called Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, they picked that name perfectly, Gerald.
Most middle class name you can think of, Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, no wonder Lister is so horrified in Back to Reality when he thinks his name is Sebastian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot more to be horrified at than that, but I mean, that's just sort of the icing on the cake. Sebastian.
Yeah, but it ties into the allegory of it as well with Crichton. I mean, we talked about race, but I suppose the more accurate comparison would be class. It's like with robots being at the bottom of the ladder and humans at the top, and you're not wanting Lister sort of talking about him, well in his own way, not going into a wine bar doesn't make him not working class anymore. But but the idea in his head being that you've got to stay true to who you are, and not forget about your origins. Even if you do, make it in life. That's you should never, if you'll forgive the expression, shit on your own doorstep.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I agree. I mean, you're right. I mean, you could. It's a sort of racial parallel, or you can read it as a class parallel. You could read it as both. I mean, it works, but it works both ways.
Yeah, yeah. So it's and just It's just a really nice scene between the two of them. Really, really nice. There was a cartoon character called Popeye the Sailor Man who once said, "I am what I am," and Crichton's going, "Are you sure? I always thought it was Descartes." Yes, so did I.
I always want to add, it was also Gloria Gaynor. Famous disco song called "I Am What I Am." Anyway, we're on 55 minutes, so we need to start wrapping up.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, we haven't. There is the bit with the curry monster, which.
The curry monster.
We don't need to go into detail about because I mean I find it funny, I mean it's a movie, but there's not really that much to say about it unless you had anything to say about it.
I think it's just after spending a whole episode talking about quite not heavy but complex subject matters. It's just nice to spend the last 5 minutes just having a bit of a silly chase sequence with a really dumb monster and with an equally dumb solution, turning him into like a type Lister into a tiny RoboCop.
I do like the way when he uses lager to kill a Vindaloo, though.
It's just a very silly. I think it was needed after everything that that happened. You kind of needed something to relive the tension, or relieve the tension, rather.
Right, actually, because I did notice. The next episode, Justice, ends with Lister sort of delivering a sort of a moralistic speech, and the writer sort of undercut that by having him fall through a trapdoor. And I guess we're kind of wary of falling into the trap where they have the lead sort of deliver a moral lesson at the end of every episode, because obviously that's not the kind of show Red Dwarf is. So I guess that is probably why they don't do it here either. They have a sort of knockabout ending, and we don't actually get to see Crichton change back to a mechanoid, because we don't really need to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's Lister and Crichton's conversation. That was pretty much the conclusion of that arc, and now it's just we've got another 5 minutes left. Let's just have some fun. Let's have Holly talk in a deep voice. Let's have a monster created from a curry, and let's have Lister be RoboCop. Why not?
It's funny. You're right. I understand why they did it, because it's more amusing than just sort of ending with more chatting. As you say, they've already resolved the plot. So it's better to do it this way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Crichton turning back into a robot is merely trivial at that point. It's like, we know it's going to happen. Let's just do something fun.
I agree. Yeah. Just of course, at this in series 4, I've noticed. Well, he's always very sort of wide-eyed and idealistic, but in series 4, he sort of gets sort of more sort of philosophical, and delivers speeches, and of course, as I said, in Justice, they immediately undercut it. But they don't always undercut it. They do have him tell Rimmer off in Meltdown as well, and give him a real sort of cutting moment, So I like that, because it shows that they're establishing Lister as a sort of person you're supposed to most of the time agree with, but he's not infallible, and they will undercut him where necessary.
Exactly. Yeah. I think again, I suppose it's part of his growing maturity as well. Over the course of the series, that as he's getting older, he's having more time to reflect on stuff like this that he didn't have before the Radiation League, and so he's becoming, maybe not more sensible, but a little bit wiser, in the process.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and we've just hit the hour mark, so we should probably wrap it up there, unless you had anything else you particularly wanted to say about this episode.
No, it's just a very, very good Crichton episode, and a really, really good sci-fi episode in general.
Yes, I agree. And so just one more thing, which is ratings overall and for slashiness.
Yes, overall, 9, 10, 9.5. I'll go 9.5. It's just, as I say, it's a great science fiction concept and a great episode of Crichton, and definitely, I think, one of the best Crichton episodes, definitely. Sorry?
I just said agreed. Sorry, carry on.
All right. But, and in terms of slashiness, again, there isn't really much to read into, I don't think. So maybe a 2, I guess. I suppose maybe the double Polaroid scene maybe could be.
I suppose, yeah.
You'd squint hard enough, but yeah.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I agree with you. This is not a particularly slashy episode. I think I'm gonna give it 3 out of 10 on that score, because most of the time, so the more interaction an episode has between Lister and Rimmer, the slasher it tends to be, and obviously this is more of a Crichton Lister episode, so yeah. Mm-hmm.
More of a Crichton episode, and more of a personal episode as well. It's much more introspective, I think, rather than about relationships. It's more about, you know,
Yeah,
how
it's
you
more
see.
about sort of, well, philosophical, I am what I am stuff, yeah. Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think overall, out of 10, I'm going to give it 8 because I mean it's a very good episode. I like it, you know. But I mean, I don't give very many episodes 10 out of 10. You know, I think the only one I've given it 10 out of 10 so far is Thanks for the Memory, you know, because I mean I'm trying to, you know,
Well,
try not to go too high so that, you know, can save myself for the episodes that are 10s out of 10s for me personally.
well, I'm a sucker for a good Crichton episode, so I'm slightly biased.
That's fine. I mean, you know, I mean that's why I want people to give scores because I mean, obviously, everyone has different biases, you know, and so that's fine. Okay then.
Yeah.
So I just want to say to you thanks very much for guesting. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Mm. Okay then, that wraps up this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. I also want to say thank you to Hologamet for technical assistance. And I hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on Tumblr or Discord on the posts where I've linked to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. And I'm going to repeat my announcement from the previous episode, just in case anyone else missed it. To say something now for the benefit of anyone who isn't on Tumblr or Discord, and may have noticed some earlier episodes disappearing from Buzzsprout. It's because that site deletes episodes after 3 months. But don't panic, nothing has been lost. We're in the process of re-uploading the episodes to our new YouTube channel, which has the same name as the podcast. We've currently got the whole of Series 1 on there, and the rest will follow soon. So if you want to listen to those episodes again, just search for Smeg and the Femmes on YouTube. And the next episode we'll be covering is Justice. I hope you'll join us then, but for now, goodbye.